we're going to talk about the three different types of constellations that exist out there. So just to review, a constellation are regions of the sky in which stars appear to be grouped together. And constellations really are man-made objects, and it's something that we have been using over thousands of years to help us measure time. So when we're looking at this map right here, all the stars that are within this section that's colored in purple is part of the constellation called Pegasus. But the shape of Pegasus is also traced out here as well. And we see that across the sky. And the reason that constellations are designated in this fashion is so when astronomers throughout the world are trying to look at a certain part of the sky and identify something or discuss it, we're all looking at the same part. There are three types of constellations that exist. We have circumpolar constellations, zodiacal constellations, and seasonal ones. So let's go through what each one of these mean. The first one is called circumpolar constellations, and these are ones that never disappear below the horizon and can be seen all year round. Now, depending on where you are in the globe, you may see more or less of these, and also what your general location and terrain is like. For example, I have a big mountain that I live on and it covers a good portion of the sky, so some parts of the year I can't always see exactly these constellations, but if I would move, I would be able to. So let's break this word down. The word circum is Latin for around, and polar comes from the pole star, and all the circumpolar constellations circle around the pole star, which is also named Polaris. There are 5 circumpolar constellations that I'm going to really be going in detail about. One is Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and I have that pictured right here, but you probably might be seeing the Big Dipper within the bigger constellation of Ursa Major. We also have Ursa Minor, that is a circumpolar constellation, and this is known as the Small Bear. And you can see the shape of its dipper is slightly different than the Big Dipper. The handles go differently, the brightness is a difference, the size is a difference. And this star right here is Polaris. So the last star in the handle of Ursa Minor is known as Polaris. So these two I'll go into more detail about a little bit later. Another circumpolar constellation is known as Draco the Dragon, and this constellation is sandwiched in between Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. So up here we have this trapezoid-like head. It comes down, wraps around, and its tail is in between the dippers. Our final 2 circumpolar constellations I'd like to introduce you are Cassiopeia, the Queen, which has this W or M-like shape depending upon its orientation in the sky, and Cepheus the King. This one looks somewhat like a house, and depending upon its orientation, it can be upside down or right side up. So these circumpolar constellations are ones that you should be able to identify all year round. Our next type of constellation is called a zodiacal constellation, and these are ones in which the ecliptic, or the path of the sun, passes through them. And if we break down this word a little bit more, zodiakos is Greek for circle of little animals, and if we look at the different constellations, you can see that many of them are represented by different animals. And of course, if you have ever heard of the signs of the zodiac, or you follow any type of astrology whatsoever, you will notice that these are the signs of the zodiac. And at one time, astronomy and astrology were the same thing, but in the past 400 years and since the Enlightenment period, these two things have deviated and are no longer the same thing. But as long as a sun passes through these different types of constellations, it's considered a zodiacal constellation. And in fact, there was a little bit of hubbub recently about Ophiuchus, which NASA named as the 13th sign of the zodiacal constellation. And there's actually a lot of misconceptions about this. But if you look at this picture right here, the sun does pass through this constellation. So in terms of astronomy, it would be considered a zodiacal constellation, and it takes up a good amount of real estate in the sky. It is a very large constellation, and it's one that was created by the Greeks thousands of years ago. So this is not really a new constellation, but just one that NASA has since acknowledged is a zodiacal constellation. And to review, we have Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpius, Sagittarius, and Capricornus. And these are all seen during different parts of the year, so they could also be considered somewhat seasonal constellations. But they are named zodiacal because these are the ones that the sun takes a path through. If we take a look at this star chart, I can point out for you where the ecliptic is, or the path of the sun. This green line right here is a path the sun travels in throughout the year. So any constellation that passes within that green line is considered a constellation. And you can probably recognize some of the names, such as Aquarius and Capricorn, and so on and so forth. Our final classification of constellations ends with seasonal types, and these are ones that can be seen during specific times of the year and during particular seasons. So for example, during the winter, these are the type of constellations you should be looking for in the sky. And as I take you through the course, we'll go into detail about which constellations are winter, summer, fall, and spring, so you can have a good understanding of when you should be looking for each type of constellation. And if you look at the star map overall, or a star chart, and you think about dividing it into 4 sections, you can get a good idea of when you're going to see different types of constellations. So here we have our summer constellations. Down here are our spring ones. We have some winter ones here, and then these are the fall constellations you would see. So just to review, there are 3 types: circumpolar, ones that you can see all year round. You have zodiacal, ones in which the sun passes through.